I'm deeply indebted, in fact, that many people in this room, all of the panellists sitting with me, and many other people have contributed to the report that the Minister launched today. And I'm also delighted that some of my colleagues from both EY and from the Department of Agriculture and Water Resources are also here today and who contributed greatly to the development of the report. What you have on your chairs today is a summary of a report that will be launched in a couple of weeks' time. The full report probably runs to well over 100 pages and contains much more detailed information and evidence and data. But the summary report that you have today certainly contains the key highlights and the major areas of focus and recommendation. The Minister, David Littleproud, announced the project back in September last year. A project for us to work with the department and with people right across the agriculture, fishing and forestry sector to create a shared vision for the future, a shared vision for the whole innovation system. And that was very much stemming from his desire that Australia should have a world-class system. This morning I think he talked about the best in the world, one that is modern and dynamic, one which delivers results, and one which is therefore attractive to capital and people to make it all happen. And EY was tasked with bringing many of you together to discuss what that future could be and should be. And so in many respects this is not our report, this is your report and the report of many other people right around Australia. We of course consulted very widely in developing the report. In a minute I'll put up some of the statistics of the numbers of people that we spoke to. What we saw of course through that was a diverse range of views, but overwhelmingly highly passionate people who believe absolutely in the importance of agriculture, fishing and forestry as a profitable and sustainable way to secure jobs and opportunities for Australians forever. Not just to 2030, not just to 2050, but this is something that should be here forever. And ensuring that it works as well as it possibly can is the challenge that I think we now all face. We of course found out pretty quickly that many people have been doing a lot of thinking about this, and I'll pay tribute to some of those people shortly. So just a couple of basic pieces of information. Australian agricultural innovation today, of course, has been built up and designed over many years. It's made of institutions, of bodies that were put in place over time across the different states and territories in the Commonwealth and across the different commodities and geographies that we have across this large continent. We believe that while that provides great strength, it also limits the ability to respond to a rapidly changing world. We went out there to understand the challenges and the opportunities to create a more coherent system, to overcome some of the issues that people had been raising, and to really focus on what the best in the world could possibly be. We spoke to many different people right across the industry, including researchers and research institutions, the research and development corporations, industry representative bodies, producers and processors, investors, government agencies, input companies, multinationals and young entrepreneurs right across the startup, accelerator and incubator community. Well over 500 people we talked to. Many people also, as I've said, had been thinking a lot about the future. And I certainly should pay tribute to the fact that we have built on and taken the work from the National Farmers Federation, from CSIRO, from the Council of Rural R&D Corporations, from the Academy of Science, from Innovation Science Australia, and indeed more specific reports such as the recent Precision to Decision report led by Cotton RDC, but involving all of the RDCs and the department as well. And as I said, in undertaking this task of creating a shared vision, we met with many people. We met with over 550 people, both in Australia and overseas. We performed over 300 interviews. We had 10 workshops, many focus groups, 3 weeks of travelling to regional communities in Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria, Tasmania and Western Australia. And we also conducted surveys to tap into people who we weren't able to see in person. So again, I'd like to thank everyone who participated, because the level of cooperation and participation was deeply engaged, deeply passionate, and collectively adds up to the report that you have there today. Some of the key insights that we developed, having spoken with so many of you and others, were that there were many key areas for focus and for change. There was a strong view that system coordination and integration needed to be improved to drive increased efficiencies and more consumer and end user focused solutions. There was a view about the need for a better culture of innovation itself, including through a greater awareness and appetite for risk. There was a strong sense that that we have been relevant on the world stage, acknowledging that Australia, in absolute terms, is a relatively small agricultural country, producing around 2% of global agricultural output, but a sense that we were slipping behind, and particularly some of the countries that we studied in depth, such as the Netherlands and Brazil and Israel, have shown examples of how they have reformed their innovation systems as key enablers of more productive, sustainable and profitable agriculture. There was a strong view that that investment patterns needed to change, that we needed to be able to build on the great strength we have, and particularly the resourcing of institutions like our RDCs, CSIRO, and our universities and our Commonwealth and state departments, but that there was a gap in investment that is genuinely transformational, genuinely cross-commodity, and genuinely for public good activities. There was a strong insight out of all of our work that there's an opportunity to attract diverse talent and to improve our commercialisation focus, to take great ideas and to actually put them into practice, and a whole variety of ways for that to occur. There was a strong sense that our innovation infrastructure needed to work to better connect people into the future, and indeed to build a global reputation for Australian agricultural innovation through innovation platforms that accelerate knowledge sharing. There was a strong view that there's an opportunity to better increase the amount of collaboration occurring amongst different elements and different groups and participants in the innovation system to develop better relationships that lead to solutions with greater impact. We heard from many people about the need for extension and adoption to be improved so that those great ideas and great research actually makes a practical difference on the ground at the farm level. And finally, we heard that there needed to be more flexibility and adaptability in the system to respond to the global drivers, to capitalise on new opportunities, and to be, to use a word that's used a lot, more agile, to be able to move more quickly, because the risks and opportunities that we face are many and they're coming at us quickly. So as a result, we also, through this work, looked at a number of other countries and their innovation systems, and specifically, as you'll see there on the slide, the US, Brazil, Israel, the Netherlands and New Zealand. And we gained some key insights from many interviews with senior leaders across the innovation systems in those countries. A real sense that one of the key factors in driving their view of agribusiness, of agriculture, and its future, is that there was a clear sense of national purpose, a clear leadership of the ecosystem, so that overall priorities and responsibilities would be clear, and they could ensure that investments and efforts and talents were aligned. There was a strong sense from those international discussions of a clear understanding of value proposition and competitive advantages, understanding of the strengths and positioning in the global market for innovation that shape strategic decisions, for example, Israel in ag tech and New Zealand in premium agriculture. There was a strong focus on commercial outcomes and applied research, of diversity of funding environments, of international partnerships and collaborations, of working across the world to share common problems and common issues. The importance that they all see in an innovation culture, the concept of innovation precincts and centres of excellence, of bringing together farmers, input providers, universities, and creating centres where these smart people were working on common problems together. And finally, one of the key insights we gained from those overseas discussions were effective adoption pathways were required, pathways through the value chain to ensure that there's engagement and incentivisation to ensure adoption of new technologies such as shared facilities and dedicated staff to do that. The international effort was interesting in that all of those countries, of course, are different to Australia. They all have different history, they have different size, they have different scale and climate and whatever. They have different systems of government and layers of government. They have a different history. And so our report does not suggest that we just slavishly adopt another system, but we think it provides valuable insights for how others are responding and to see what that means in terms of the future of the Australian system with the history and features that we have. So as you'll see from the report, we worked with our many stakeholders and people that we talked with to develop a purpose statement, a shared vision for the future. A vision that effectively means that the agricultural innovation system is designed to harness the power of knowledge, to make our food and fibre systems more competitive, prosperous and sustainable. So the triple bottom line: competitive because we are working in global markets, prosperous so that our businesses, our farmers, our companies are in fact profitable and can succeed, and sustainable because we want to be here in 100 years and 200 years and 300 years doing this. And knowledge being the centre of this, the harnessing that knowledge, whether it's research, whether it's data, whether it's smart people with experience, to harness those things, to bring them together to create this future. And of course, coming from that, we then outlined a series of recommendations for the future. Now, these are necessarily very high level. There is a great deal of detail to be filled in, and we were specifically asked by the Minister not to attempt to fill in the detail, to not get to go to issues such as the structure or responsibilities of existing organisations, but rather to imagine what great would be in the future. And now we can have the discussion, and I'm sure that in the months ahead, the Minister and whoever the government may be following the election will want to focus on, well, given this view of the world, what should we actually do in practical ways? Now, the Minister laid down the challenge this morning that leaders across the system should think very much about the future, not be tied to just what we do now, but to think about the future for our children and our grandchildren, quite literally, and to think about how we can transform what's a great system, which has served us well, but which we believe can serve us much better in the future if these sorts of recommendations are followed. A system which has strengthened leadership, cohesiveness and culture, a clear uniting purpose, inspiring participants to work seamlessly together and to drive change and success. A system where funding and investment will achieve an agricultural ecosystem that makes visionary investments in national priorities and applies a mission-oriented approach to tackling challenges. are world-class innovation practices to ensure that we have an innovation system that builds capacity and capability, where young innovators are inspired through their education to explore, design and develop transformational solutions, and our innovation precincts, which are world-renowned, pursuing global opportunities for innovation. Where we strengthen our regions, and indeed, given that agriculture is so important in regional Australia, strong regions flow from strong agriculture, and strong agriculture flows from strong regions. And we believe that a system where the regions can influence and shape directions and priorities for innovation and embedded internationally with expertise and knowledge serving world problems. And finally, a next generation innovation platform that is powered by ability to be the best in the world, generating connections and collaboration to inspire cutting-edge science and technology, to see data being brought to life through modern technologies, and where innovations are well supported by government policies and regulations to ensure government gets out of the way, as the Minister was talking about, but where government supports what has to happen as well. And finally, the report sets out a roadmap. Now, the roadmap's already out of date because where it says 2050, the Minister mentioned 2030 this morning. So the pressure's on. Much of what we recommend, we believe, can happen relatively quickly, but we know that there are some deep discussions that need to occur, that some of the recommendations do have implications for some of the institutions that we currently have. But we are an adaptable people. The opportunities are enormous. The risks are significant. The challenge, I think, that the Minister has laid out, and in some reports, this report lays out, and this report comes from what you have said, is that we do need to think differently. If we were designing a system today from scratch, we would probably have something quite different to what we have today. If we want to design a system for the future, the challenge is how do we get from where we are now to the best in the world in the next 5 and 10 and 20 years. Thank you very much, and I look forward to answering your questions later.